All right, 1-4, properties of numbers. We did this last year. This is not new to you. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. Remember this? Okay, so let me talk about this before you start to write. Distributive property, don't worry about it, because we're going to have a whole lesson on distributive property, so don't worry about it. Now, the rest of this, here, I'll just even cross through this, so you don't have to worry about it. The rest of this, you don't have to write this whole thing. You can write what column, either the numbers or the variables, that you can understand the best. Does that make sense? So if you'd rather see it in numbers, make sure you write the numbers column. If you'd rather see it with letters, make sure you write the letters column. But you for sure have to write this. Okay? So I'm making it simple, and I'm giving you a choice. You choose which way you like the best. So if you see a problem, you can look back at this and say, okay, I know what it looks like. If you like either variables or numbers. And there's about 3 more properties after this. So if you're making lines in a chart, there's 3 more that follow this. Okay, so commutative and associative properties. We talked about these last year. Do you remember the stories that went with them? Okay, so commutative property. You're going to remember in a second. Okay, but that's for associative. What? Yeah, remember, okay, if this is our community and I say, okay, yeah, here you move here, Hunter, you move here, Kenzie, move there, Brian, you move up here, we're still the same community, we're still the same people, right? Okay, so that's what's happening here. Notice how same numbers, they just flip-flop, they just moved a little bit. Commutative property. Associative property is the one that Pizza Ranch, you walk with a group of friends. Remember, so gentlemen who were not here last year, we had a group of 3 friends. And this group of 3, were you one of them? Everybody always remembers who they were. You guys, that's great. Okay, so 3 group of friends are walking to Pines Ranch, except for on our sidewalk, we can only handle like 2 at a time, you know, like 2 beside each other. And one has to go in the back. So they walk to Pizza Ranch, and one goes in the back, and 2 friends walk to Pizza Ranch, and then on the way back, 2 different ones walk in the front, and then somebody else walks in the back. Now, if you look at the associative property, that's what's happening here. These 3 friends, 3 numbers, 2 of them, let's see, these are my 2 friends that are walking in front, and this is my buddy that's walking in the back. Same thing here. 2 friends, somebody else walking in the back. It's the same group of friends, only they just shuffle around a little bit. Associative property will always have parentheses, always. Okay, so if you see something going on, if they ask you what property something is, and it doesn't have parentheses, guess what? It's not associative if it doesn't have parentheses. Another thing, you have to have either all addition or all multiplication in all of them. You can't say, oh, I'm going to throw in a subtraction sign in there. That doesn't work. Okay? Because if you think about it, is subtraction, is 2 minus 3, or let's see, 3 minus 2 the same as 2 minus 3? No, they're not commutative. They can't flip around. Addition can because it doesn't matter. Same thing with multiplication. They can flip around because it doesn't matter. Is division commutative? No, because 2 or 12 divided by 2 is not the same thing as 2 divided by 12. Okay? Questions on this? Okay, I'm going to add another page because I want to write a few more things. Yeah, not great. Okay, so the last 3, okay, additive, identity. Yep. Okay, then there's multiplicative. Yep. Identity. And then there's a 0 property. All right, so here's your 3. Oops. Oh, there we go. So additive identity is when you take anything and you add 0 to it. So if I would take 3 plus 0 equals 3, this is an example of an additive identity property. If I would say, hey, what's your identity? Most likely you would tell me your name, right? So that's what's happening here. 3 plus 0, it's basically saying its own name again. It's saying itself again. That's why this is called an additive identity property. Now, multiplicative identity, this is a little different. Because what number do you have to multiply by so it stays the same? 1, right. So, it'd be like 5 times 1 equals 5. That's the multiplicative identity property. When you multiply by 1, because it says its own name in the answer. And then last but not least is our 0 property. And this would be like 2 times 0 equals 0. Anytime you multiply by 0 and you get an answer of 0, that's the 0 property. Questions so far? If you aren't sure which one it is, look at the sign. The sign's going to tell you which one it is. Okay? Look at the sign. Are you multiplying? Are you adding? What's my answer look like? Look at the sign. That's going to help you. Somebody smart. Okay, quick. Tell me what property these are. Commutative. Property of what? Multiplication. Okay, this one, we don't need to know that one because that's distributive. What about this one? Of. Very good. Okay, commutative property of multiplication. Today when you put them on your notes or your homework, I don't care if you abbreviate, but abbreviate so I know what they mean. Like, Olivia put MI on hers, and I'm like, what does that even mean? But it's multiplicative identity. Okay, give me something a little more than MI. You got to give me something so I know what you mean, okay? So I don't care if you abbreviate, and I really want you to put of addition or of multiplication. Good? All right, good to go. One thing I need to talk about is a counterexample. And a counterexample, this is one of the last vocab words. A counterexample is proving something wrong. Proving something wrong. So if you like to argue, this is for you. Somebody said Justice in the other class too. That's so funny. Yeah, he would be good at this. So this is proving that a statement is not true. So for example, I have an example up here, and my example is 4 is a prime number. First of all, what's a prime number? Carver. Yep, one in itself. Yep, the only two factors are one in itself. So if I say, well, 4 is a prime number, is that true? No, what's the example you can give me that tell me it's not true? 2 times 2. If I say, well, 10's a prime number, what would you say? 5 times 2. That's, if I would say, every month has snow in it. August. Okay, if we live in Iowa. Usually July doesn't have any snow. June. If I said, you're in school every month of the year. Except for August. And July and June and some of May. Okay. That's a counterexample. You're giving me an example of why I'm not true. Okay, that's what a counterexample is. Some do. All right, last thing for today. Last things for today. Ready? We're simplifying expressions. Are we solving them? No, we're just simplifying. And we're going to use the properties that we talked about today. Okay? So simplify means writing in the smallest form possible. We can't solve, but we're going to write it as small as we can. So, what's going to happen is they're going to give us something like this. And it's our job to make it as simple as possible. I have k plus 5 in parentheses plus 8. What two numbers up here can I combine together, Maddie? 5 and 8. So then where should my parentheses be? Around the 5 and the 8, because those are the ones I can put together. Now, what property did I just use to move those parentheses? Associative. Remember, parentheses are my friends, remember? So if I would move my parentheses, I'm going to use the property of associative property. See how I just move my parentheses? Okay. Now I'm going to solve. Maddie? We can't solve it. We're going to make it as small as possible. That's why it's called simplifying. So k plus 13. That's my answer. What were you saying? We're going to do that later. No. Nope. We're going to make this as small as possible. You see how I have two things I can put together? I'm basically going to put what I can put together. I'm going to simplify it, make it as small as possible. Okay? So down here, what are some things you know that can go together? 5 and 9. What should I move so I can get that 5 and that D? I'm going to flip them. Okay, I could move the parentheses and I could move the 9. I could use commutative and associative property here, couldn't I? Yeah, definitely. So let's move the 5 and the D. So D times 5 times 9. I'm just putting my parentheses around, and I have D times 45. Can I write it like this? Can I write it like this? Can I write it like this? Yeah, I can write it all those ways. That's just fine with me. So the only thing you're doing here is you're putting together what you can put together. It doesn't even ask you what property you're using. I'm just showing you how you're using them today. Okay? It doesn't ask you what property it is. Questions for me? Do you need another example? No? Okay, we're going to do a few more with a partner then. Open your math book. Open your math books.